Attention Guffers, the boys, I mean men, at Guff would like to invite you to hashtag prop up this season on Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is a daily fantasy sports app for player props. They've eliminated the need to do countless hours of research because they only ask you about the top tier athletes in a respective sport. For NFL, simply choose 10 out of the 20 player prop options to build your lineup. Each prop has a fantasy point total associated with the over or under based on its likelihood to occur. The more points a selection is worth, the riskier it is. Rack up the most points to win a share of the prize pool. Thrive has awarded over 1.5 million in prizes since launching in 2018. Use promo code GUFF when you sign up today and you will receive an instant $20 bonus on your first deposit of $20 or more. That's GUFF GUFF. Download the Thrive Fantasy on the App Store or Play Store or by visiting their website, www.thrivefantasy.com. Sign up, prop up, and get guffed.
Welcome everybody, Guff Gang. We are back. It is
Week 2.
Week 2 is in the books.
Woo!
In the books, and
if your players didn't get injured, did you even play in week 2?
Very astute. Yeah, we got a lot to cover today. There is a lot of heartbreaking news for a lot of players. We are going to be doing some news. We'll give you our top performers for the week, and we'll be telling you who made us humbled and humiliated through the week. And we'll give you some waiver wire targets and some trade targets. So people you want to pick up, people you may want to sell, you may want to buy. And if you're looking for our recap for Monday's game, that's going to be in the next episode. So we're recording it a little bit beforehand. So without any further ado, let's get into some news. News and updates. All right, so first item of news. It looks like fantasy football was ravaged with injuries in week 2. We got hit hard. Some big ones. Saquon Barkley tore his ACL. Really unfortunate for the guy. Having injuries pretty much throughout his whole career, his NFL career. Unfortunately, he's shut down for the season, and it looks like the Giants are working out Devontae Freeman right now. So we'll see if he signs there. He may come up in another segment. Another injury, Christian McCaffrey. Like the top 2 backs you've drafted this year are both hurt in week 2. CMC has an ankle injury, and according to NFL.com, it looks like he's expected to be out multiple weeks.
I think it said, I just saw another news report saying it's anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks, which, that'll bring us into week 8 if he goes 6 weeks. So it's pretty bad.
Significant part of the fantasy season.
Mm-hmm.
This is not good. Additionally, Devontae Adams looks like he tweaked his hamstring. Not a whole lot of news around that. He did exit the game against the Lions. We'll see if that progresses any further. Be sure to keep an eye on that if you're an Aaron Rodgers owner or obviously Devontae Adams owner. Next, the 49ers got hit really hard against the Jets. Jimmy G is dealing with a high ankle sprain, and Raheem Mostert is dealing with an MCL injury. They're both definitely out for week 3. Shanahan's already announced that Nick Mullins is going to be the starter for week 3, but it looks like Raheem Mostert's probably going to be out a little bit more.
Yeah, one of the guys in our league posted this thing. The 49ers lost their starting quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, center, backup center, defensive ends, defensive tackle, and cornerback, and they still beat the Jets 31-13.
That's ridiculous.
That just goes to show you how bad of a coach Adam Gase is.
There you go.
I mean, honestly.
Speaking of Adam Gase, too, real quick, is anyone shocked that Robbie Anderson has had 2 really good games to start the season the second he gets away from the Jets?
He's a good player. He might be the most talented wide receiver on that Jets team. He might be.
He might be. We talked about him a little bit. I know I talked about him a little bit last week. I was looking more at DJ Moore on this game, but Robbie Anderson looks good.
Yeah. I just think it's funny because all of these talented players, you see it with Kenyon Drake, you see it with Robbie Anderson. The second they get away from Gase, it's, there's the talent. So so we'll probably see more of that from Robbie Anderson.
Probably so. Moving on, Cam Akers left the LA Rams and Philly game with a rib injury. I haven't seen a whole lot more on that. Have you guys seen anything?
I haven't.
On Cam Akers? Yeah.
No, haven't seen a lot on that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a running back by committee regardless. So,
yeah,
never know who's gonna be the hot hand there.
You're probably going to see obviously an increase in Malcolm Brown. So,
yep.
Additionally, Drew Lock left the Pittsburgh-Denver game with a shoulder injury, and I think he's getting an MRI, which would have been yesterday. So we'll see what the news brings on that, but it doesn't look very good for Drew Lock. Along with Drew Lock, Cortland Sutton, who was already hampered by a shoulder injury, left the game with a knee injury and some cramps. And we just heard that. He's actually going to be out for the season. Mm-hmm. Zach, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, there hasn't been a whole lot of news on it, but right before recording, just saw something saying he tore up his knee. Not sure what exactly kind of knee issue it is, but they said he'll be out for the season, just from the severity of how bad he tore it up. So really weird to see, especially with him coming back from that AC joint sprain. Thinking if he did get injured, it'd be something along the lines of a re-injury. So yeah, very unfortunate to see, but gotta pivot there. Jerry Jeudy could be a surprise bump up after this. So
yeah, I think Judy's a good bump, and Fant probably is a good bump too.
Yeah, Fant's been getting all the targets with Cortland out, so now that he's going to be out the remainder of the season, yeah, I think Fant was a great steal in the drafts.
As well, Brashad Perryman left the game with an ankle injury. Some lower level guys, Brashad Perryman, Paris Campbell actually had a possible MCL injury. Really didn't look good. Yeah. James, you want to talk?
I was just going to say this sucks because we were all really high on Paris Campbell. And
yeah, we were.
I think we all thought he was going to break out any week now, but dang.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, you can't predict injuries because, if we could, we definitely wouldn't have said to start him this week. But, yeah, it's unfortunate. Thought he was going to do a lot, but, we'll see what happens now.
Yeah, not great. As well, Dawson Knox dealing with a concussion. And Darrell Williams had a little bit of an ankle injury in their game. So that's kind of all the big and some smaller injuries that we're looking at. As well in the news, Justin Herbert got the start against the defending Super Bowl champions. And it happened because of Tyrod Taylor is dealing with a chest injury. I'm of the thinking that he's going to hold on to the job. I think Twitter as well thinks that he's going to hold on to the job, but really? I think Anthony Lynn came out and said that Tyrod is still going to play, and Herbert hasn't earned it.
That's crazy, but
yeah.
I wonder if that's just a...
Go ahead.
You go, Jen. I wonder if that's a formality, because I don't know.
Like he hasn't made a decision yet, and he's kind of trying to put it off. I don't know, but
or maybe he's got to talk to Tyrod first before like he's in the hospital right now, or was in the hospital, so maybe he's having to wait till all this dies down to say, "Hey, by the way, Tyrod, we're benching you." Because I don't know the way Justin Herbert looked. He was looking good. There were a couple of plays where he got sacked because he held onto the ball too long. He could have thrown it away easily and gave up a good bit of yards. But that's kind of rookie stuff right there. But he looks good. And against the Chiefs, too, like, I'm sorry you had Tyrod in there. The Chargers defense looked great, but you had Tyrod in there, and that would not have been as close of a game as it was. So, yeah, for him to take the Chiefs to overtime, unfortunately to lose it to a 58-yard field goal kick, but, I think he still did great. And that's the fantasy production we wanted to see. Austin Eckler got involved on some passing downs. You saw Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen breaking out. That was the kind of stuff we want to see as fantasy owners. So,
You also saw some deep targets to Mike Williams, too, which is those kind of targets he's getting. Looked good for the Chargers. Additionally, as an Atlanta fan, I need to apologize because we blew an additional 20-plus point lead in the second half and do not know how to field an onside kick. So,
man, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, they did not know that they could touch the ball before. Like, they thought they could not touch it, like, until it hit 10 yards, which was weird. Like, wow.
I mean, apparently Dan Quinn has said that the Falcons know the rules, which is kind of sad having to say that as an NFL coach. But, yeah, a heartbreaker for sure. Big fantasy game in Atlanta and Dallas as well. Big game for Russell Wilson and Cam Newton Sunday night. I mean, they went off. Big games. I think we called that. I think everybody called that, but we did call that. Really good game between those two, but that's probably going to about do it for our news. So, James, would you like to take us into some top performers of the week?
All right, guys, let's get into our performers of the week. All right. Our top performers of the week at quarterback. To start off, we had Josh Allen with 34.48 points. Zach, what's your reaction to this?
I think we all knew this was going to happen. What we did not know was that it was going to be primarily in the air and not on the ground. He had 4 passing touchdowns on the day. No rushing touchdowns, which, Cam Newton ate the Dolphins up last week when they played with the rushing. So we all kind of assumed it was going to be rushing. It was passing instead, but still, we told you to start him. We thought he was going to have a lights out day. He did. Was actually a little surprised by the game too, though, because the Dolphins actually were able to stay in it, and it was a pretty close game, which was exciting to see. So, good game overall, but yeah, I'm thinking we're going to see a lot more of this Josh Allen.
Yeah, agreed. It was weird because the Dolphins, I heard somewhere that they were a pretty good secondary. But I think a few people came out and they just carved them up. Buffalo's a really good team. Better watch out.
Did y'all see that one run Josh Allen had where he shoved the linebacker to the ground, then ran for 10 more yards? 2 people had to finally pull him down.
That's the kind of QB runs I want to see.
God, he looks great. Next, we got Russell Wilson and Cam Newton in the same game. They had 33.42 and 34.58 points, respectively. Joey, you want to take this one?
Yeah, big game between both of them. I think Russ threw for 4 touchdowns in this game. I think we all said that we were looking for Seattle to get back to the ground game in this, but Russ carved him up. Russ is cooking, and I think the Seahawks are letting him cook. Otherwise, Cam, we saw Matt Ryan carve the Seattle defense up. Cam did a terrific job. He looks more and more comfortable as we're going into the weeks. He's looking more and more comfortable into that system. I think they're utilizing him the right way. It's weird. He looks a little bit thinner than he did on the Panthers towards the end. Maybe it's due to him not wearing as many braces and protective gear that he was needing in Carolina.
I think he was on Weight Watchers this last offseason, actually. That's why.
No, Bill Belichick got him on that Subway diet.
Yeah, definitely.
But he looks great. You got a lot of production out of both of them. It was kind of heartbreaking to see Cam not get that touchdown on the last drive of the game, especially if you were in a tight game with Cam as your quarterback. And
that was a big hit. Him flipping in the air like that and stuff, that's kind of something with as big as Cam Newton is, you don't really see that happen that often to him.
That's crazy.
So yeah, pretty unfortunate, but great game overall for sure. What do y'all think of? Do y'all think Russell Wilson is just that good, or do you think that this year we are able to start more quarterbacks against the Patriots defense and they're not as elite as last year?
I think Russell Wilson's that good. This might be an MVP year for him. I think he's an elite quarterback now. I really do.
I think he's always been an elite quarterback. It's just he's been overshadowed by all these bigger names, which is strange to see. Russell Wilson's not a big name per se, but I think it's both. I think with the opt-outs, I think the opt-outs from the Patriots hurt them, and I think Russ is Russ.
Yeah. Well, and they've never let him cook.
Right.
They've always just kind of established the run first. I think that if he were to play the Chiefs all 16 games of the season, he would probably have 30-something points every single. It's one of those things where if he's playing in a they're behind, they have to ditch the run. He is that MVP QB that's going to just play lights out. But unfortunately, they do not have those games like as last night where it was that close every single week. So there will be a couple of games probably where they are nonstop running and he has a 14-point game, unfortunately. But yeah, this year we might actually see more of those 30-plus games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're starting Cam and Russell every week, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Next, we got Dak Prescott, 39.8 points. This was my start of the week at quarterback. Joey, your thoughts?
Well, as an Atlanta fan, I hated to see him carve up Atlanta, which was strange because in the first half, they had about 4 turnovers. Now, I think there was there one interception from Dak?
I don't think so.
I don't think he threw an
I don't think there were.
interception.
It was all fumbles, which they didn't have, I think, 3 tackles available for this game, Dallas on their line. But Dak came through. I mean, we all knew he was going to produce against Atlanta. It looked a little strange in the first half, but he carried him through 39 points. He looked terrific. He looks terrific. Yep. The Cowboys are clicking.
I like to see those rushing touchdowns because Dak isn't one of those QBs. We know he can run. He's not one of those QBs that's, like Lamar Jackson or like Josh Allen where he's going to have like an absurd amount of rushing yards each game. So it's good to see him being used on the goal line because that just bumps up his floor right there. But yeah, it's also great to see too because last year they ran such a high-powered offense, and I think they ran some of the most offensive plays last year too. So this year to kind of see that hasn't really been lost with Mike McCarthy coming in, really, really good stuff to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if they can keep winning some football games, Dak might be one of those guys we're talking about for MVP candidate too by the end of the year.
Absolutely.
All right, some other players who had great games at the quarterback position. Ryan Tannehill, 26.76 fantasy points. Matt Ryan, 28.52. Kyler Murray, 32.14. Joe Burrow with 24.54. Patrick Mahomes, always has a good game every week, 27.48. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick, 24.32. Jared Goff, 23.98. Gardner Minshew, 23.46. And Justin Herbert with 22.24. Y'all have anything you want to add to any of those players?
I'm liking the Minshew and Herbert games. Minshew, we're always kind of saying, okay, everyone's always talking about him saying, yeah, he's underrated, like he could do well and stuff, but then unfortunately, he does have some average games where then it puts him right back on the waiver wire. I'm thinking this is the week to say, all right, Minshew Mania, here we go. We'll talk about it later on in the waiver ads, but, I think he's a great pickup here if he's not owned because he's shown us so far with these first 2 weeks against not bad defenses at all that he can have a good fantasy season for you. So I'm very excited about him. Same with Justin Herbert going against the Chiefs defense. Looked really good. Tyrod's not going to play. He looks like an exciting pick as well.
Yeah, I agree with both of that. I think Kyler Murray is going to be a dark horse MVP candidate because he looks good. Mm-hmm. And granted, I don't know if Washington's defense is what it was cooked up to be in Week 1 against a very injured Philly team, but he's got a connection with Hopkins, and he's being very aggressive, throwing downfield and making a lot of plays with his legs. So I like what I'm seeing from Kyler Murray. Additionally, I think Joe Burrow had a good game too. I mean, he threw 61 times, and Cleveland is a little bit ravaged by injury as well, but I think he's in the right system. I think they're going to use him well. He's got weapons. I think Burrow could in the right matchup, be a decent stream.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I wanted to add to this is Herbert. I think you really hoping he's the starter because he just improves everyone's fantasy value on the Chargers team. He really does.
Exactly.
Definitely.
All right, let's get into some running backs now. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, 25.8 and 23.1. Half-point PPR. Zach, what's your thoughts about this?
This is what ideally we would like to see. We know that Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are, kind of that 1A, 1B best duo, I think, in the league right here, with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They're both honestly starting running backs, so the fact that they're playing for the same team And Nick Chubb, it looked like the Nick Chubb show, which is also what we want to see, because everyone spent that either high or lower back of the first round draft pick on him or even beginning of the second round. So you want to see him getting the touches, and that is what happened this game. They established the run. He looks good. He was the primary back to start the game. And then once we saw the second half, Kareem Hunt came in, started getting that receiving work, also looking great. That's kind of what we want to see. We want to see them go Nick Chubb first and foremost, make sure he's getting the production, and then spell it with Kareem Hunt whenever he comes out. Unfortunately, I don't know if this is going to happen every single game. This was Cincinnati they played against. But I don't think they're also going to be going up against defenses like the Ravens every single week either. So I think we're going to get something kind of in the middle here where, probably Nick Chubb is going to have the majority of the points, but you'll see Kareem Hunt having those good weeks as well where maybe it teeters to Nick Chubb not having as much. But this was great to see, both backs having a great fantasy day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. If this is what you drafted, Chubb for, and Kareem Hunt. They look good. I think the one thing that I didn't really like to see was the lack of passing production between the two. Obviously, Kareem Hunt cashed in on his opportunity, but only saw 2 targets, and Chubb only saw 1 in the game. While you had Odell over there balling out, but they're still terrific running backs, and I think I agree, Zach. They may be the best tandem in the league.
Yep.
Yeah. I think these guys you probably have to start every week just because of that ceiling that they've proven they have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, James, I want to ask you real quick. I did not include this, so we have later on in the show our trade targets. Nick Chubb is not included in there at all, nor is Kareem Hunt. But, James, being a Nick Chubb owner, would you be interested in selling high on Nick Chubb right now after this game, or do you want to hold on to him?
I mean, it always depends on the offer, but I'm holding on to him. I think he's going to continue to produce each week. And he was getting the bulk of the carries. He was getting the lion's share.
Yeah, that was great to see because it really was. I did not even know if Kareem Hunt dressed out for that game the first half. They really wanted to get Nick Chubb featured. So, yeah, that was good to see and refreshing.
All right, next we have Leonard Fournette with 25.6 fantasy points. Joey?
Yeah, big game from Big Len. He racked up 25 points. I really love to see, and this is obviously against Carolina's defense, but he had 103 yards on 12 carries, so incredibly efficient, and 2 touchdowns. Popped off that nice 46-yard run, and what was really nice was seeing 5 targets go his way. So they're throwing him the ball, and you still had 7 carries from Ronald Jones, but I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying, bye-bye Ronald Jones. This is kind of it for you. So I'm thinking he may be a nice flex next week if you need to start him. What do you guys think, Zach?
Yeah, I am excited. I think it is Leonard Fournette season. I agree with all those people on Twitter. I think this was the last week you could probably get anything good in return for Ronald Jones because I think it's about to be Leonard Fournette's backfield. Now, granted, that was against a very poor Panthers run D, but I don't know if you guys saw in the game, Ronald Jones actually had a fumble. Bruce Arians came back and said after the game, because it was kind of like a mis-exchange between Tom Brady and Rojo, and Bruce Arians straight up after the game said that was Rojo's fault. I think he's about to be in the doghouse. I think Leonard Fournette, like you said, Joey, him having targets this game was really big. And I think he's got pretty good hands. We saw that last year in Jacksonville. He actually had a good bit of receptions. I think they have constantly tried to get Ronald Jones more involved in the passing game, but he is just not that great of a pass-catching back. So I think this is definitely going to be Leonard Fournette just as a talent-wise. He's going to help this offense more, and I think after seeing him with the amount of carries and involvement he had this week, it's only going to go up for here, and unfortunately down for Ronald Jones.
Yeah, only 12 carries, and I agree with you. I think it's going to go up, and I think he is going to be an RB1 this season for sure. All right, next we have the 40 bomb from Aaron Jones, 43.6. Zach, your team, go for it.
Yeah, this is exciting stuff because all offseason, everyone kind of faded Aaron Jones a good bit, saying, last year he was very hyper efficient, especially in the touchdown category, so he has to regress. It's, from what we're seeing, not looking like he actually will regress. Now, he probably will, but wow, like, this is the Ronald Jones we saw last season. And on top of that, it almost is weird kind of foreshadowing of what happened last season as well, because he had 18 rush attempts, which is awesome. Like, it's not like he had 10, but just an insane amount of yards. So he's still getting the carries and is also very hyper efficient with them. He got the touchdowns. He had 8 targets in the passing game, which is awesome to see in the receiving game, because last year, before Jamal Williams got hurt, we saw him a little bit more in the passing game. And on top of that, Devontae Adams has a nagging hamstring injury that could come back. So they're going to want to lean a little bit more on the run game and also Aaron Jones in the passing game. So I'm very excited about this production. I think this brings us a little closer to seeing that we might not actually see as big of touchdown regression than we thought we were going to see from last year. And Ronald Jones, if C-Mac is actually out for several weeks, he probably won't be the RB1 at the end of the season. We could see Aaron Jones, if he has the same type season as last year, being the RB1 for the entire season. So,
yeah, it looks really good for Aaron Jones. As an Aaron Jones owner, love to see those 8 targets. God, it was so good to put up that 40 burger, especially on you, Zach, with your own players.
That was upsetting to see. Your team went off.
They sure did. But yeah, it was a great game from Aaron Jones. The 8 targets were fantastic, and I think with Devontae Adams out, you're probably going to see something looks very similar to last year with Aaron Jones. I like to see how A.J. Dillon fits into this picture too. We'll see, and Jamal Williams, but right now it's the Aaron Jones show.
Yeah, this Packers offense is explosive, and you want a piece of it. I mean, the wide receivers and Aaron didn't have the best game this week because Aaron Jones was getting all the touchdowns, but it's not going to be like that every week. I think everyone's going to eat in this offense.
Yeah,
Agreed.
But what's interesting is towards the beginning of the season, after all of the draft type news coming out with A.J. Dillon being drafted by the Packers, there was a lot of talk saying, okay, A.J. Dillon's probably going to eat a lot of this work, be the goal line back, get all of these touches because this is Aaron Jones last year in his contract. Well, now seeing Aaron Jones perform, it might actually be more of a prove-it year where, hey, we're going to feed you the ball, we're going to give the ball to you because you are a very talented back, we want you here, so we may actually give you more production just to make sure we do want you here, as opposed to moving forward with A.J. Dillon as our future back. So you could have a very good year from Aaron Jones because they decide to hyper-utilize him as opposed to doing a committee.
Yep. All right. Some other players who had great weeks this week: James Conner with 19.1, David Montgomery with 20.2, Ezekiel Elliott with 19.2, Miles Sanders with 18.6, Raheem Mostert, 17.7. Mark Ingram, 14.7. Darnell Henderson, 19.1. Christian McCaffrey, 22.8. Jonathan Taylor, 18. Melvin Gordon, 15.4. James Robinson, 19.5. Austin Eckler, 16.8. Anything y'all want to add to any of that?
Joe, you can go first.
Yeah, I was going to say David Montgomery was really nice in this game. 16 carries, 82 yards, 5.1 average. And then also led the team in receptions and targets with a touchdown. He had a nice, it's an interesting pass from Trubisky, scrambling around, but nice touchdown. You love to see that production, especially from a big player in that offense. And also Jonathan Taylor really took control of that backfield. He was my start of the week at running back. Looked great. He produced for you. You're going to see a lot more Jonathan Taylor in this offense, I think.
And that was really unfortunate for those who just spent a good bit of fab on Nyheim Hines, him coming out with 0.9 points and half PPR. I don't think that's going to be the case season long. Against the Vikings, they had a lead early and stayed ahead the entire time. So I think there's going to be more games where Nyheim Hines is a viable flex option. But, they really were trying to establish Jonathan Taylor in this game. I think he had almost, if not 20 carries by the end of the first half, which was insane. Good to see from him. One player that I'm more excited about is Austin Eckler. This was kind of a prove-it week for him. Last week you see him get 19 carries on the ground, which was great, but he only had one reception on one target. This week to be bumped up to, I think, 4 receptions, have 50 or so yards in the receiving game, and then on top of that, getting the 16 carries on the ground. Good to see, so keep an eye just to make sure Justin Herbert is going to be the starter still, but that's relieving to see. And then Mark Ingram wouldn't play too much into this fantasy day, kind of touchdown saved his day there. I still think, in between 14 points and last week's of like a 2.9 point game in half PPR formats, anywhere in between that's going to be what you see from him on a weekly basis, which is not super viable to have as your RB2. So,
Yeah, and the only guy, there's a couple guys I want to highlight here. James Conner. As a James Conner owner, I was scared that this was going to be a 50-50 split between him and Snell, but no, James Conner owned that backfield. He had 16 carries versus 3 for Snell. So I think James Conner owners can be rest assured that this is his backfield going forward. Another player is Miles Sanders. I think we were all scared of this Eagles O-line, and that was going to significantly hold him back, and he had a good game in fantasy. So you drafted him high. I think you can be confident with him going forward. He does have a tough upcoming schedule: Cincinnati, San Fran, Pitt, and Baltimore. But I mean, you probably have to play him in these games, but I would tamper expectations a little bit.
Right. And I think he didn't have that many receptions. I think it was just like 3 or something like that. But he looked good in the passing game, and they looked like they will probably get behind in a good bit of those upcoming games that they have with that tough schedule. So, yeah, I think that we can rely on him if it's not going to be in the run game, that you can still rely on him in the receiving game. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any confidence in Gibson after his touchdown this week?
He looked pretty good. I actually enjoyed seeing him on some of his runs. He looked like a very elusive and decent back. This is still something that I'm kind of wanting to wait on and see, though.
Yeah. I mean, he outpaced all the other running backs with 13 carries, and McKissick had 8, and Peyton Barber only had 1. So I don't know. I'm still waiting to see for that backfield to kind of shake out. This may be an indication of Antonio Gibson taking the lead, but I don't know, because McKissick was even more efficient, 8 carries for 53, with Gibson going 13 for 55. So
yeah.
I don't know.
This week. So I think this week what was interesting was that all of the waiver pickups were kind of busts. You got Benny Snell as one of the top waiver pickups, Naheem Hines, Malcolm Brown if he was on your waivers. It was just very ironic and unfortunate to see that all of these pickups, Scotty Miller too, did not do much this week. So we'll see. We'll hold on to them, see what happens for them in the games coming up.
All right, let's get into the wide receivers. Calvin Ridley, 26.4 on the day. Joey?
Big game from Calvin Ridley. We were looking at all these wide receivers in this game, and Ridley was the king of all of them. Was it 3 touchdowns or was it 2? I can't remember. Either
2,
way,
I believe.
He scored you 26 points and had a field day with Dallas' secondary. Matt Ryan was carving him up. 7 receptions, 190 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 10 targets. We saw last week that he, Julio, and Russell Gage all had about 10 to 12 targets, I want to say. But, you see Julio taking the double coverage a lot, and that frees up Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's just as dangerous as Julio Jones. So big game from Calvin. You like what you see, honestly, from like a second or third, maybe even 4th round pick out of him. He could, with some injuries coming to these wide receivers, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Julio looks a little delayed with a hamstring, and Devontae Adams. Calvin could be pushing for a top 3 spot.
Yeah, I think the touchdowns are probably going to go down upcoming, but I still think, with the yardage, with the targets there, and with Julio kind of dealing a little bit with a little hamstring tweak, Calvin Ridley could be the guy. Now, I don't know about the 20 points each game, because both week 1 and week 2, he had 2 touchdowns in both of those games, but I still think the yardage and the targets back it up for sure.
Yeah, I think this is a highly explosive offense. I think they're going to put up points. Someone's going to score touchdowns, and right now it's Calvin Ridley. I think you got to start him every week from here on out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
All right. Next, we got Scary Terry, 22 points. Zach?
Yeah, so this week was much more of the Scary Terry we are anticipating. Last week, it was a closer game. It's against the Eagles. Haven't really been good this season. So didn't see a huge fantasy day from him. Still a little bit of production. But this week he had 10 targets, 125 yards, I believe, and a touchdown. And I think the Washington football team is going to be playing from behind with some of their upcoming games. You know, they're going against like Baltimore coming up, LA, the Giants, who don't have a great secondary. So I think this just kind of paves the way for the Scary Terry that we were anticipating seeing. I think he's the favorite target there. I think the game script's going to be in his favor. And then talent-wise, he is a great receiver. So, yeah, I think this is what we're going to be used to.
Yeah, the big thing with Terry McLaurin is he had 125 yards, but he averaged 17.9 yards per catch, which is really nice to see Dwayne Haskins chunking it downfield. Or it could have been a lot of yards after catch as well, but either way, he's still averaging a bunch of yards. He's getting the ball, 10 targets. You love to see it.
Yeah, he's a damn good wide receiver, and he's really your only reliable fantasy option on the Washington football team right now.
Yes, absolutely.
Next, we have Stephon Diggs, 25.3 fantasy points. Joey?
Yeah, big game. It was a big game overall for the Bills, and with Josh Allen having a 400-yard day, it looks like, last week we saw John Brown really perform well, but this looked like Stephon Diggs' day. 13 targets for him, 8 receptions, 153 yards, and a touchdown. This is what they brought him in for. This is what you want to get out of, you spent a third round. He was going around, I think, the same area as like Calvin Ridley, and he's producing in that offense. It's against Miami, and they're not the best defense, so we'll see how it shakes out going forward, but the talent is obviously there, like we all know, and he looked great. He looked great. This is what you drafted Stephon Diggs as. If you went 2 running backs, then Stephon Diggs is your wide receiver 1. You're getting a wide receiver 1 performance out of him.
Yeah, I'm a little bit different on that. I'm kind of fading him a little bit just because this was the Dolphins' defense. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Josh Allen did not do as much in the run game this game, so that lends the way for more passing yards. I think Stephon Diggs has kind of done this to us in the past where he'll throw a monster game and then have a couple of silent weeks, which, the last 2 weeks he's had good weeks. So we'll see. But I think with Josh Allen's rushing attack, in different game scripts, even when they're down, I actually think Josh Allen would be more prone to trying to run the ball, take the game into his own hands. So I'm fading Stephon Diggs just a little bit from this. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think as long as Josh Allen is playing at a high level, Diggs is going to have good games. So let me ask y'all something. Who would y'all rather have for the rest of the season, Calvin Ridley or Stephon Diggs?
Ridley.
Yeah, I'm going Ridley too.
Just that offense.
Yeah, definitely. Next, we have Julian Edelman, 21.9 fantasy points. Zach?
179 receiving yards by Julian Edelman last night. That is absurd. Do y'all think that Cam Newton is a better fantasy QB for Julian Edelman than Tom Brady was?
It's looking like it, for sure.
I think he might be, just because of the threat of running.
Yeah. I was eager to see what N'Keal Harry could do this game. He still had like an 11-point game in half PPR formats. Cam actually did a fairly decent job of spreading the ball around. Damiere Byrd got some targets and some yards, but Julian Edelman is looking like his go-to target. With Cam's threat on the ground and running, it only opens up the pass game that much more, especially for that slot receiver role like Julian Edelman is. So I honestly, I could see Cam being a better fantasy option for him, and it's good to see that you took him probably maybe as a wide receiver 2, maybe even as like a flex, but you probably are going to get high-end wide receiver 2 production from him for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
Cam's number one option, and he's going to keep pummeling him with targets.
Well, it's interesting you say he's number one option because N'Keal Harry had 12 targets in that game. He was looking for N'Keal Harry. And I think we saw Atlanta, it's a high-powered offense, but they picked apart Seattle's secondary, even with Jamal Adams back there. But, I mean, Julian Edelman had a terrific game. I had him going off on this game. I thought he was going to have a really good game. But yeah, this is what you expect. 22 yards per catch, too, was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. All right, some other names who had some good games this week. OBJ with 15.4, Tyler Boyd 16.7, CD Lamb 14.5, DeAndre Hopkins 16.8, DJ Moore 16, Robbie Anderson 13.4, Mike Evans 19.9, Tyreek Hill 19.3, Keenan Allen 13.1, DK Metcalf 17.2, Tyler Lockett 16.2, and N'Keal Harry 11.2, which I think we already just kind of talked about. But any one you want to highlight here?
So one name, Mike Evans, kind of expected he was going to have a big day. You know, it's against the Panthers. Their defense isn't all that great. Chris Godwin out with a concussion. So I think most of the crowd was shifting towards Scotty Miller. But with Mike Evans saying he's good to go, his hamstring injury's gone, you know, he was ready to play. I think it all kind of pointed towards him having a big day. Also, my start of the week for receiver was CeeDee Lamb, and he looked really good in this game. Like, I actually teeter back and forth between deciding if him or Amari Cooper is the better receiver in Dallas right now, because they both are just elite talents. But for a rookie, like, he looks phenomenal. So yeah, those are kind of my two highlights.
Yeah, I was helping my dad with a DFS pick, but I also had DK Metcalf and Raheem Mostert. And I was deciding between the two to start. Ended up going with Mostert, but DK is looking more and more like a wide receiver one. I think Lockett is still the one in that offense, but DK is really coming along in there. Also, you know, Mike Evans is looking really good. Robbie Anderson, we talked about him earlier, had a really nice game. I think he's providing that field stretcher for Carolina. Yeah, that's those are most of my thoughts on those wide receivers.
Yeah, and DK, I just love the fight between DK and Gilmore the whole game. A great cornerback and a great wide receiver just going at it.
Absolutely.
I think DK is a great wide receiver, and I do think he's the number one fantasy option to have there over Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, I think he's emerging as the number one wide receiver in Seattle right now.
All right. Tight ends of the week. Jordan Reed with 20.5. Joey?
Big game from Jordan Reed. I think, you know, a lot of people were a little low on him just because of his history and his inconsistency. But this game stuck out to me, definitely because, one, it's the Jets. And two, without Kittle there and with other injuries for the 49ers, Jordan Reed was, I thought, almost guaranteed to get production in this game, and he sure came alive. You know, I can't remember his stat line, but I think he had 2 touchdowns at least in that game. Yeah, so you picked him up off of waivers, and there was a lot of tight ends that came off waivers that really produced for you in this game. Hang on, I'm pulling him up real quick. 7 for 50 with 2 touchdowns. Yeah, really nice game from Jordan Reed.
Are we interested in Jordan Reed at all if George Kittle? I'm actually not sure if he's going to miss this upcoming week. So if he doesn't, then by all means, do not worry about Jordan Reed at all. But if he did miss this upcoming week with Nick Mullins in, would y'all be interested in starting him?
I think you could find a better option than the second starting tight end.
Yeah, I think Jimmy G looks
Probably
a good bit to his tight ends. You know, you see the 2 touchdowns on the day. That's kind of something you see from George Kittle a good bit. So, which yards after the catch is also something you see from him. But yeah, I think with Nick Mullins in, wouldn't be as viable of a tight end starter.
Yeah, and I think they're going to get back to the run game too, since Jimmy G's out, even with Mostert out and McKinnon too. You know, they still got not McKinnon, excuse me, Tevin Coleman out. They still have McKinnon and even Jeff Wilson Jr. to take some of the load off. yeah, I don't know if he'll be sustainable throughout the year, but he was definitely a good spot start for you.
Mm-hmm. Next, we got Mike Gesicki, 23 fantasy points. Joey?
So I I actually was a little worried about this matchup because Buffalo is a terrific defense, and it's the Dolphins. However, Gesicki pulled through, and I ended up starting another tight end over Gesicki, who scored like 1 point less than him, but 11 targets from Ryan Fitzpatrick is really nice. They had Devontae Parker in, they had Preston Williams, they had your two starting wide receivers, but Gesicki led the team in targets with 11 and capitalized with 8 for 130 and a touchdown, with a 27-yard touchdown too, which was the longest of the team. So, really nice game from Gesicki. I'm not sure if you want to go with him going forward. I don't know about that offense, but I think you'll still see volume there, but it may not be your 11 target game that you're going to get out of him. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think with Devontae Parker, we didn't know if he was going to actually play this week or not, and so I think he's still coming back kind of from his injury. I think once he gets completely healthy, some of those targets will kind of be filtered out more towards him. And the Dolphins have the 16th toughest schedule against tight ends for the remainder of the season. Not the worst. This would be a game where you would think, okay, not a whole lot to be had on the passing attack just because it's the Bills' defense. They're a good defense. But I think actually on the outside is kind of where the passing attack could be hurt. And so it kind of filters into where you have to target a little bit more on the inside to your tight ends and to your RBs. So I think that could also kind of help for the production he had. So, yeah, good game from him. I can see more good games, but not something I'm looking super into.
Next, we got Tyler Higbee and Jonnu Smith, 25.9, 22.4 respectively. Zach?
Man, Tyler Higbeast. Man, he looks good. I know like all of this production came from touchdowns, which he had some great plays yesterday. It was good to see him get involved. He is severely out-snapping Gerald Everett right now, which is also good for him fantasy-wise, just because last year Gerald Everett was hurt for a majority of the year to where you were able to see Tyler Higbee get a lot of the production and volume. Looking very similar still, but also kind of one of those things where I could see him having this monster fantasy day from 3 touchdowns, only 50-something yards, and then next week going back to 5 points or so. What we really want to see is kind of what we saw last year, where he, at the end of the season, was getting about 100 yards per game. That's what you want to see more of, getting a good bit of targets, about 100 yards per game, running that 12 personnel offense. Because the 3 touchdowns, it's awesome to have when you have them in your lineup, but it's very unpredictable.
Yeah. It sucked being a Robert Woods owner and seeing those goal line looks go to the tight end, but it looks like Tyler Higbee is finally taking control of that murky tight end landscape in LA, because I still think Gerald Everett's a good talent, but it looks like Tyler Higbee's taking control, especially with this game. Really good game from Higbee. Definitely touchdowns. Yep. Did it for him.
All right, some other names who performed at the tight end spot this week. Hayden Hurst, 15.7. Noah Fant, 15.7. Hunter Henry, 11.3. Hawkinson with 8.2. Travis Kelce with 19.5. Dalton Schultz with 17.3. And Mo Alley Cox, 13.6. Anyone we need to highlight here?
So Noah Fant was my start of the week, and I liked him because of Cortland Sutton being out, and I think Drew Lock was going to hyper-target his tight end. He ended up getting 5 targets on the week, made 457, and got his touchdown in. But going forward with Jeff Driscoll in, I don't know. Cortland Sutton still being out, I think Fant is still going to get volume, but the quality of those targets may go down some without having Drew Lock in there, who is, I think, a better quarterback than Jeff Driscoll. But yeah, you're probably still gonna play him.
Yep, I agree. I think Noah Fant still did fairly well with Driscoll in. Not sure how long Drew Lock is going to be out for, but I think now that we know Cortland Sutton's going to be out, he will still get a good bit of production. Another name, Hayden Hurst. We kind of knew, seeing the amount of routes that he ran, the amount of offensive plays he played last week, that he would have to get involved, and this was a good game to see that. 15 points, awesome to see from him. I'm not sure how many targets he had, but, this was kind of a shootout game, but I think this is eight targets. Yeah. So that's awesome, which, Matt Ryan is really spreading the ball around right now, but I think that's what the offense is going to do. I think you could start several Falcons players on any given week if you wanted to, and they would be able to produce for your team. So I think he's going to spread the ball around. I think Hayden Hurst is going to get his share of the targets. So good things to see there. Hawkinson, I'm dropping a little bit down on my rankings because Kenny Golladay is going to be coming back next week is what reports are saying. I think when he comes back, Hawkinson is going to take a major hit.
I was actually going to say the opposite. He didn't get any touchdowns this week, so he didn't really have that big blow-up game like all these other tight ends. But he was getting targets and he's getting yards. I think he has a very safe floor.
Yeah, the one I was going to talk about actually was Dalton Schultz, because we've seen in the past Dak love to target his tight ends with Jason Witten, and Dalton Schultz recorded 10 targets in this game. Now, he caught 9 of them for 81 and a touchdown. He looks to be like the one that's going to take control. You still have Blake Bell as another tight end, but Schultz looked like Dak's target. He actually led the team in targets. He was one above CD and Amari Cooper, who both had really similar stat lines.
Yep.
But Schultz really produced, and I think he's going to be he's going to be somebody you may be able to pick up and ride throughout the rest of the season, especially with Blake Jarwin being out. Yeah. That being a really nice offense, and Dak favoring his tight ends.
Definitely.
All right, now we're getting to humbled and humiliated. These are players who let you down this week. At the quarterback position, we have Carson Wentz with 12.38, Deshaun Watson 14.7, and Tom Brady with 8.68.
Yeah, Tom thoughts? Brady, we were all kind of, I know Zach and I were, or not Zach, I think James, you and I were pretty heavy on the Tom Brady comeback.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't look great.
I was not. Don't include me in that.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. They still got some work to do. And something that was pointed out to me was Tom Brady looks a little slow in that offense.
Yeah.
I thought you meant on his feet. I was like, he's always looked slow on his feet.
I mean, yes, he has always looked slow, but he looks. Maybe it's him being in a new uniform. Does pewter and gold make you look slower on TV? I don't know, but
Bruce Arians does have Tom Brady is the GOAT. He is a vet. He's been in the league for so long, but at the same time, Bruce Arians does have a fairly complex offense.
Yes.
And I kind of talked about this at the beginning of the season. I think the Bucs have a lot of chemistry to build, have a lot to kind of work through, to where I could see maybe week 5 is kind of where things start to mesh and start to flow together, to where you're able to see a much more high-powered offense and Tom Brady having a lot bigger of games than what he's having.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to need to. Yeah, they're going to need to adapt that offense, I think, for Brady.
Yep.
A little bit more. But yeah, not great. Not a good game.
Not great, Bob.
And then Deshaun Watson, I think that's just a tough Ravens defense he's facing. Yep. He'll have better weeks going forward.
Yeah, I think 14.7 with established wide receiver 1, Will Fuller leaving for part of the game. Like, that's fairly decent, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. All right, running back position. Sony Michel, 1.9. David Johnson, 6. Saquon Barkley, 2.8. Adrian Pearson, 4.1. Malcolm Brown, 4.7. Naheem Hines, 0.9. Derrick Henry, 8.4. Todd Gurley, 6.1. Y'all's thoughts?
So one person I want to bring up is Kenyon Drake. He had 10.5 points half PPR. He had about 20 carries, though, which is great to see. And on top of that, he actually tweeted out saying that for the last 2 weeks in fantasy, if you're unhappy about it, to go ahead and drop him, and he will grace someone else with on their team. To me, that just means, he's getting the carries, he's getting the work. I think they just have a very potent offense to where you kind of never know where the ball's going to go. But they run a good bit of run plays. I think they're at like 33% or something run plays. So I'm not worried about him at all. I don't really see 10.5 as a huge bust. It is concerning if you spent first round, second round on him, draft capital, but I see bounce back for him. A lot of the others, though, it's kind of, with Saquon Barkley, minus Saquon Barkley, a lot of the others, I kind of see them having games like this more often than not. Maybe not Derrick Henry either, but Sony Michel, you expect that. David Johnson, unfortunately with the Texans, he only had like 11 carries week 1. If he's only getting about 11 carries per game and a couple of targets, you're going to have maybe a 6-point game here and there. AP, same thing. And all the other RBs, kind of the same thing. So,
with the running backs, so you have Sony Michel, who went 7 for 19 with 2.7, didn't look good, and then let me see here. I think it was Derrick Henry had 84 yards still had 8 points, but it looked like the game script for both of those games kind of switched. So I think a lot of people, myself included, thought Derrick Henry was going to go off. He's historically gone off against the Jags, but it looked like they were passing the ball a lot more in that game. And the same thing kind of happened for Sony Michel. Now I think the yards were obviously a little bit more for Henry, and I think the carries were a little bit more too. But I think out of those two, obviously Derrick Henry is going to be the better back, but.
You don't think Sony Michel's the better back?
I mean, I may be a little biased with Alabama, but sue me. No, I still think, it's a bit of a bust for Derrick Henry, but you're definitely going to start him going forward. Sony Michel, I'm not too sure about. I think, Damian Harris is on IR, but all through camp, he was progressing, looking like he could take the number 1 spot. So Sony Michel owners, beware. You did draft him. And I think you drafted him knowing these kind of things as well.
Yeah, I don't think any Patriots running back gets a lot of work this season with Cam being there. I think it's going to be Cam Newton's going to be their RB1 and their QB. And
said it last week,
maybe Damian Harris comes in, looks better than Sony Michel, which isn't really that difficult. But I don't see anyone having lights out RB production on the Patriots.
Yeah, and only other name I want to bring up is Todd Gurley. I'm worried about him if I'm an owner. This is a game he should have had a big game against this Cowboys defense.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something like what we kind of talked about of them just kind of having a very intense passing game where they are spreading out the targets and those passing downs. But it's unfortunate for Todd Gurley.
It's the efficiency: 20 carries, 60 yards. Ugly.
Not good.
Nope. Not great, Bob.
All right. Wide receivers who let you down this week. Robert Woods with 10.3. Juju with 8.3. Allen Robinson, 4.8. Adam Thielen, 4.6. Slayton with 4.8. Marvin Jones, 10.3. T.Y. Hilton, 4.3. A.J. Green, 4.4. Jarvis Landry, 6.1. Sammy Watkins, 1.6. Devontae Adams, 5.1. Alan Lazard, 6. Malcolm Brown, 6.7. Anthony Miller, 0. And Julio Jones, 3.4.
Well, Julio is battling a hamstring injury. Not great to hear about. But yeah, he didn't have many targets. Was really the Calvin Ridley show. But at the same time, Julio is battling that hamstring injury. So not really worried there, but we'll monitor that to see. AJ Green with 13 targets, I don't see, I see 13 targets more than I see only 4.4 points. It's something where I think they'll connect more on that, which actually I'm not sure. A lot of people are saying that AJ Green looks like he's lost a step, so it's hard to tell if he's lost a step or if Joe Burrow just is overthrowing him on these, because it's weird because you don't see him overthrowing other receivers and he's completing to other receivers except for AJ Green, but I don't know, 13 targets. It seems like he's trying to get AJ Green the ball, so I think they will connect eventually. A-Rob, I think he's got a bulk of the target share to where I wouldn't be concerned about this either. unfortunately, it's Mitch Trubisky, and same with Anthony Miller, though I honestly would probably lean towards dropping him at this point because, you draft him thinking, okay, he's going to be a good receiver for you. He's a great talent, but looking at it now, he's not even playing that many downs. He really comes in only for 3 wide receiver sets. When they're just running 2 wide receivers, he's not in there. So, unfortunately, Trubisky can't trust him that well to where, unless you have Allen Robinson, I don't even know if I would want Anthony Miller on my team anymore.
Yeah, it was not pretty for the Bears receivers this week. Thielen, didn't look great, but it just was not a good game for Kirk Cousins. Obviously, we didn't bring him up in the quarterbacks, but good Lord, that was one of the worst fantasy games I may have ever seen.
But Thielen still saw 8 targets,
Yes.
and he had about close to 35% of the targets around the team. So
Yes, Thielen is still safe. It was just a bad game for him.
for the Vikings in general.
Yeah. Marvin Jones, he still put up 10 points, and so did Robert Woods, receivers I had, but it was just a bad game for the Lions overall coming through. And Sammy Watkins, we warned you about this. A lot of people warned you about this. If you played Sammy Watkins, why did you do that?
I really hope no one dropped like a bunch of fab on Sammy Watkins last week because, this is something that we see every year, and we told you, you get the great first game, and then right after it just goes downhill. So
he's fool's gold.
You can drop him, right?
Yeah.
No problem.
I would, yeah.
Only other name I want to bring up is T.Y. Hilton. I'm a little worried about that production because Paris Campbell got hurt. That's targets that should have gone to T.Y. He needs to produce. What do you guys think about this?
I am worried because I'm worried on several accounts, yes. But there's like a silver lining. So I'm worried because, yes, like Paris Campbell did get hurt. So you would think, okay, more targets can go to T.Y. Hilton. Phillip Rivers seemed to extend the ball around to kind of fairly evenly. But it seemed like they just wanted to run. That kind of seemed like the game script this game. So I think that's a silver lining is that, T.Y. Hilton did not draw that many targets in a game where you'd think with Paris Campbell going down that he would get a lot of receiving work. But at the same time, the game script did not justify for that. So I think in other games where it is much more competitive, we saw last week against the Jaguars where it was a very close game. T.Y. Hilton didn't have a great day. He actually had a drop touchdown catch, but he saw a lot more targets than he did this week. So I think the narrative will change a little bit. But there are going to be a lot of times, probably in a lot of weeks, where you are nervous about it because you can say, okay, this is probably a week where they're going to just ground and pound with Jonathan Taylor. So those will probably be the week where T.Y. will see 4 targets, 3 receptions for 20-something yards. But there will be some weeks probably where he'll see, 7 or 8 targets for a good bit of yards and a touchdown. So, there's that silver lining, but I'm a little worried too.
It's game script for me, but I could see, this game's where he disappears on you.
Yeah.
All right, tight ends. We have Zach Ertz with 6.7, Dallas Goedert with 5, Gronk with 0, O.J. Howard with 1.6, and Mark Andrews with 3.4. Who are you guys worried about?
Well, I'm not worried about O.J. Howard because I'm not rostering him. Gronk, I didn't really have that high, but I think this is a concern if you drafted him. I know some people thought, like, you're going to get the Gronk of old that we are used to, with Tom Brady still throwing him the ball. I think this is going to be something that will take some time to establish if we do actually start to see, that prime Gronk form. But I don't think we're going to see prime Gronk form. But so I think that's something to worry about just because you're going to probably have to wait several weeks in order for, some spark to happen there. Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, not very worried about. Only thing I could say about that, though, is Goddard, it's going to be tough to decide when he's going to have a good game and not. You're going to throw him in your lineup one week. He's going to have 5 points like this, which I guess is okay because Zach Ertz also had only 6 points. So neither of them really, the Eagles offense as a whole, besides Miles Sanders, really didn't have much going. But unfortunately, you will have those weeks because both of them are very elite, very good tight ends. And the Eagles are kind of going off of a not fully healthy wide receiver core right now. You're going to have weeks where Dallas Goedert gets you 5 points. You'll have weeks where he gets you 20 points. So it's going to be kind of that juggling act of when to start him. And then lastly, Mark Andrews, not worried about it all. I mean, if you're worried about Mark Andrews, you should also be worried about Lamar Jackson because he didn't have that great of a game. But, you can't worry about either of them because they're going to produce for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Mark Andrews ended up with a tough game. Lamar Jackson didn't really have a great game, but I think Houston's linebackers are a little bit better than they get credit for. Now, he still saw 3 targets, which was below both Hollywood Brown and Miles Boykin, but I think that was probably that's the only thing I'm worried about with him there. It was just a bad matchup, I think. I'm more worried about my Eagles tight ends. Zach Ertz still saw 7 targets, and Goddard saw 8, but that offense is just it's just injured, and Wentz does not look good to me, in my opinion. He's not really passing the eye test for me. So. Go ahead, James.
I was just going to say, I think those tight ends are just too good. You have to keep them in your lineup right now.
I mean, yeah.
If it gets worse, then obviously you can re-examine that. But I'm worried about the Tampa Bay tight ends. You can drop O.J. Howard, like Zach said. You got to hold on to Gronk for a little bit longer. But if he's still doing this after 2 weeks, then you can probably drop him too.
I mean, I'm kind of thinking you could hold on to O.J. a little bit more
really
than Gronk. I think it's kind of, I don't know who you'd pick up honestly in that one. I think they're both very talented. I think OJ has maybe a little more upside. Gronk obviously has the chemistry, but I would think hold OJ instead of Gronk, but I could very well be wrong. I think it could go either way.
Yeah, after last year, I'm I'm dropping OJ, keeping Gronk. All right, so let's get into the waves and trades. So we have our top waiver wire pickups this week. We're going to start off with the QB position, okay? So we have some good picks right here. We got Ryan Fitzpatrick, as James said, scored 24 points this week. Jared Goff, 23 points. Minshew, 23. And Justin Herbert, 22. What QB would y'all be picking up off waivers this week out of those?
James, you go.
I would go, I think Fitz and Herbert. Herbert, obviously, if he's not the starter, you're not going to pick up. But Fitz, I think he's just a streamer. It just depends on the matchup. I wouldn't pick him up this week. Goff is the only one I might roster.
Okay.
I agree. I think Herbert's a good stream this weekend against Carolina. Tom Brady didn't have the biggest game against them, but I think there's more. Yes, Tom Brady is new, but I think Herbert kind of showed he can make some strides in this offense. I think he's probably the better stream. After him, I'd say Fitz. But yeah, I agree. I don't want to start Goff this week, but I think he would be the one that I would roster out of all of them. And Minshew. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I like Gardner Minshew this weekend against Jacksonville. Or against Miami, excuse me.
Against his own team.
He's playing his own team. Can't be tamed.
That rascal. I agree. I think Gardner Minshew is actually my top QB just because he's showing us what he can do. They don't really have that bad of a schedule moving forward. So I think he's a great rosterable QB. I disagree with Goff just because last week he scored 10 points for you. I think he is one of those where, you do see some very productive gains, but you also see those. He has a lower floor, I feel like, than most QBs. And Justin Herbert, I actually think this week he doesn't do as well if he starts because it's the Panthers. They have a atrocious run defense. Last week, we see Justin Herbert come in because Tyrod Taylor leaves in pregame to go to the hospital. So they didn't gain script for Justin Herbert to be in there. So with that said, I think this week being able to game script with him being in there, knowing potentially that Tyrod's not going to play, knowing the Panthers have a bad run D, I think it'll be a little bit more of a rushing attack this week. So,
see, I think with Anthony Lynn saying that it's not totally Herbert's job, that they're probably game scripting for both. So I don't really know what to expect there. I don't know. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, Minshew's the man.
Oh yeah.
He's the
Good thing
stream
you
this
drafted
week.
him in your first round, James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See
And I
that
mean, all
bub?
this depends on what your team is too. Like my
True.
team, I
Yes.
have Rodgers and Brady, so I'm not going to burn Fab or a waiver priority to pick up any of these guys.
Right. Yeah.
No.
And we'll just go by positions right now, but yeah, we'll kind of give like our top waiver pick. Cuz yeah, like James said, it really does base on your roster cuz I'm also not picking up a QB this week just because I don't need a QB. But if you're streaming, those are good viable QB options as well. So, moving on to running backs. With Raheem Mostert going down, we got Jerick McKinnon as a pickup. Tevin Coleman actually went down this game as well. Saquon Barkley going down. We have Dion Lewis as a pickup, and Devontae Freeman is a potential stash. We have Mike Davis because C-Mac went down. So many injuries, goodness. We have Joshua Kelly just in case he wasn't picked up in your league. Myles Gaskin on the Dolphins, and then Darrell Henderson. So who are you guys picking up if you got to pick up an RB?
Got it.
So there's a couple that I like out of these two. It's Jerick McKinnon and Myles Gaskin. If Josh Kelly is not already picked up, go pick him up.
Yeah.
He's the number one, but I'm considering him gone. I think the matchup next week between San Francisco and the Giants don't have a very good defense. I'd run the ball. You saw what David Montgomery already put up 20 points to him. I think, even with the lack of pass catchers in San Francisco, now Kittle is set to make his return, I think, next week. But I think the 49ers are also going to get back to the ground game, and McKinnon's going to get the carries against New York. Other than him, I like Myles Gaskin. He's efficient, and he got 7 targets in that game.
Yep.
Miami's going to be playing from behind, and I think with Fitzpatrick and eventually if Tua comes in, I think Gaskin will still produce. I think he still had about even carries, I want to say, with Matt Breida, but both of them outsnapped Jordan Howard. So I like Myles Gaskin, and if not him, or I like McKinnon, and if not him, Myles Gaskin.
Okay, you have to pick up the 49ers back that's going to produce.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they are full-blown committee, I mean, historically, they all usually get fantasy points. So
if Tevin Coleman is not rostered, so James, I know in our league, Tevin Coleman actually was dropped. If Tevin Coleman, for some reason, isn't rostered and he comes out this upcoming week healthy, would you rather have him or Jerick McKinnon?
him,
Okay.
Tevin Coleman. How about you guys?
I don't know. This
You're
is
the
tough.
McKinnon fan, Zach.
I am very
like
high on McKinnon.
I like Coleman.
I'm high on
seen
McKinnon.
him.
I think Coleman receives more of the rushing game if Raheem Mostert misses extended time, but I think that McKinnon will get the passing down work, and he's looked a lot more efficient with the limited touches he's gotten. I think they give him a little bit more reins if Raheem Mostert's out for an extended time.
And if you're go ahead.
I was gonna say I like Coleman because we've seen him produce in a Kyle Shanahan system, and I think the guy's talented.
Yeah.
Then again, they're all 3 talented backs, but I like
Yeah.
them running the ball more.
Now, all these guys are guys that you probably should send a waiver in for. Who's the top 3 in your guys' opinions that you need to pick up?
Is this assuming Josh Kelly?
Yeah,
is
let's
rostered?
assume Josh Kelly
Okay.
is already on a team because
Yeah.
Joshua Kelly would be the very first and foremost. So let's assume he's on a team.
You want to go first, or you want me to?
I'll go real quick.
All right. I've got my order.
order. Oh, you go then. I'm still
Okay.
figuring mine out.
So I'd say McKinnon first, then Gaskin, and then Dion Lewis.
I would go McKinnon, Dion Lewis, and Darrell Henderson, actually. I would like a piece of the Rams backfield just in case.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going McKinnon. Obviously, if Coleman's available, I'd rather have Coleman. See, you want that backup for Saquon, but who's it going to be? That's the tough call there.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't
and
know.
even there, like if it's Dion Lewis or Wayne Gallman, or if they bring in Devontae
Yeah.
Freeman, Saquon Barkley hasn't been doing much on the ground these last 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So
you know
I'm
what?
sorry,
Let me
an
pivot.
elite
I'm gonna
back like that, like
let me
I'm
get a
sorry.
mid show pivot, and I'm gonna move to Daryl Henderson
That's
as well.
never happened here before.
Right? I'm going McKinnon, Gaskin, and then Daryl Henderson. I think I like the Rams backfield
Yeah.
better.
It's tough because these guys are injured. You have to pick up the starting running back, but they're not like McCaffrey's backup Davis. He's not going to get McCaffrey points for you.
He's not
Yeah,
McCaffrey.
But you have
And-
to play him because you don't
and
have
a
an
l-
option.
Yeah, and a lot of times too with this, like you see it with Malcolm Brown. You know, he had a lights out game last week, and then this week Daryl Henderson had the big game with a prime time like elite RB like Saquon and CMC going down. It's very rare that they bring in a backup running back and say, we give you the bell cow role now. You know, it's usually a timeshare after that. They might bring in somebody, split carries. So, yeah, it really is hard to justify a lot of times spending all your fab on, or your highest waiver priority on a running back that you know is probably going to split some work because they were a backup to begin with. So, yeah, I can understand that.
Let's move on to wide receivers. This is stressing me out too much.
All right, so
Stay
for
calm.
wide receivers, we have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Keelan Cole, Russell Gage, which I know he was a pickup last week, so if he's not picked up already, Russell Gage, Michael Pittman Jr., and Adam Humphries. Who y'all got here?
Only one I want's MVS, especially if Adams is missing time.
Yep. Joe?
Yeah. If Gage is not already taken, take Gage. But it's either MVS or Keelan Cole. And I think I'd have MVS out of the two.
Yeah, I am liking Russell Gage a lot. You know, he's had his second productive week. He's getting the targets. They're spreading the ball around. You know, I know we're talking about Devontae Adams possibly missing some time. Who knows? Julio's hamstring injury could be a little bit more serious than we thought. He might have to sit out a week or two to where Russell Gage becomes a good play as well. So, yeah I would actually say Russell Gage and then MVS.
So I think Julio's going to play through an injury, which he typically tends to do until it destroys him. But I think the Bears are a good secondary. I think they're going to try to take away Julio, or they're going to try to take away Ridley. And I think Russell Gage comes underneath. With all the targets he's getting, I really like him in this next matchup. And Keelan Cole having 7 targets, tied for the lead with Chris Conley. He didn't have as many yards as DJ Chark, who is the one there. But I think Keelan Cole is a solid add, especially against Miami this coming week.
Let me ask y'all. Now, most of these guys to me, they seem like they'd only help you for 1 or 2 weeks. Are any of these guys people who will help you season long, you think?
Russell Gage
Yep.
and MVS have the best shot at it. After him, Keelan Cole, but I think Cole is a spot play.
Yep. I agree. I would say Russell Gage probably has the biggest potential to be season long viable. But yeah, other than him and potentially MVS, I don't really see. I see them as plug and plays.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on real quick. We got some tight ends as well. So we have Dalton Schultz, scored 17 points. Joey, you talked a little bit about him, and Mo Alley Cox. Now, Mo Alley Cox, something to monitor. Jack Doyle was out this week. I don't know if he's going to be out this upcoming week. So, if he is in and he's playing, Mo Alley Cox obviously isn't as high up for waivers. So what do y'all think? Dalton Schultz? Do y'all think Mo Alley Cox and Dalton Schultz have a good shot of being fantasy relevant?
I don't. Joey, I can tell. I know you're big on Schultz, so you go ahead.
I wouldn't say I'm huge on Schultz, but I like what I saw in this matchup. I like Dak to favor tight ends. Granted, he's got a lot of weapons right now at his disposal with all 3 wide receivers and Zeke. And especially he is a threat to run it in himself in the red zone like we saw. I think Schultz could be a decent add. But I think with Mo Alley Cox, we saw last season Eric Ebron have extreme fantasy relevance. And it's still Frank Reich's system. We saw Hunter Henry do well with Phillip Rivers throwing to him. I think Mo Alley Cox Could be good to see. It just depends on Jack Doyle's injury. If he comes back next week, then you're not playing Mo Alley Cox at tight end 2. But another one I would look at if he's not already picked up would be Jonnu Smith over in Tennessee. I think he has relevance. He's definitely athletic enough. He did not lead the team in targets below Adam Humphries, but he led the team in yards with 84. He had 21 yards per catch and 2 touchdowns, and he's athletic enough to burn you going down the field. So I like Jonnu the best out of those 3, but he may already be picked up. Out of those 2, Schultz, yeah.
Yep, I like Schultz. I think Witten, had a decent amount of targets last year, so Blake Jarwin was going to fill that role, and is very athletic. Schultz looking like he might actually be able to do something similar to Blake Jarwin possibly, but it also could have just been a game script type thing. So we'll see there. Don't know if I'm as high. So real quick, top waiver ad of the week. What you guys got?
Well, let's see. Are we going to
just at any position? Whatever you think is the most valuable waiver ad of the week.
It's a running back for me, but I don't know which running back. That's the problem.
I'm saying Jerick McKinnon. That's assuming Tevin Coleman's not on the waivers. Yeah, I would say Jerick McKinnon.
It's either McKinnon. I like Gage this week, and I like McKinnon a lot. Tight ends are so hard to come by, though.
Joey, come on. 3, 2, 1.
We
didn't even list any kickers.
All right.
Gosh.
That's something else to worry about. If it's not McKinnon, it's probably McKinnon is the top ad. After him, it's Gage, and it's Dalton Schultz. Yeah.
James,
how much fab is Schultz worth to you?
He's an 80. I'm just kidding. He's not. Don't do that.
I don't know. It's one of those.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. It's not late enough in the season to where people are really hurting at tight end, but I could see maybe, I don't know. I would probably do like 7 at the most. Like I wouldn't be throwing too much up there.
Give me 10.
I was thinking 5%.
Yeah,
I was thinking 10 at the most, but I'm the highest on him, so that makes sense.
Okay.
I also think Devontae Freeman is a sneaky stash. I don't know if he's going to sign with the Giants, but he also worked out with the Eagles, and last week he said he had offers from 4 different teams. He was going to sign with the team, but he was going to wait a week. So if that actually is true, now he has potentially a 5th suitor with the Giants. So we'll see what happens. He could come and actually get on a team, and we know he is talented when he's not injured. So who knows? He could come up and actually do decent. So he's a good stash too. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, next let's move on to trade targets. We're gonna go through this quick. We got some buy lows. Knock if you disagree with me on these, right? All right. So we have Carson Wentz as a buy low, AJ Green, Adam Thielen, Leonard Fournette, Kenyon Drake, Allen Robinson, David Montgomery, Zach Moss, and DeAndre Swift. Any y'all really agree with or disagree with there?
I'm not trying to acquire Zach Moss or Swift right now.
No, I don't think I want either of those two either. Wentz, I don't want. AJ Green, I like. Thielen, I like. Kind of like Fournette. And Allen Robinson, I still like.
Yeah, I think Allen Robinson, he's got the 34% target share on the team, which is absurd. Like, I think he is the go-to target, so I think his volume and production is going to go up. Will Fuller wasn't targeted and came out of the game, so if he is, we saw last week, it looked like he was going to be that wide receiver 1. If he isn't injured or isn't dealing with anything too serious, I could still see him being fantasy reliable. So, after this game, having 0 points, someone might be scared, might be willing to dish him out for low. Not saying like all of these, these are buy lows. So if you can get them, these are kind of the lowest point that you could possibly get them. Carson Wentz, same thing. That's the reason I kind of listed him here. I could see him having 2 dud games. They don't have a healthy receiving core yet. They're still kind of trying to mesh with some stuff. I don't know if I see him having these 30-something point games that all these other QBs are having, but I could see him being maybe later on in the season a good plug and play, kind of like y'all were talking about with Jared Goff. So, right now is probably the lowest you'll get him. And, a lot of these others this is probably the lowest you'll get them. Zach Moss, DeAndre Swift, they are getting a good bit of receiving snaps. So I think with that, they can maybe become fantasy reliable. So we'll see. Those are the buy lows. Sell highs. We have Odell Beckham Jr., Mike Gesicki, James Conner, and I put Cam Newton if you drafted him as a backup. Now, if you have him as your starting QB, then do not sell him. But if you drafted him as a backup and you have someone like in our league, James, we have someone who owns him, has Lamar Jackson, and then Cam Newton on the bench, you're probably not going to go any week saying, okay, I'm going to bench Lamar Jackson. So in that case, he's kind of wasting space on your bench. You can turn upside for him right now after having a 34-point game. So that's why I kind of said that. OBJ, actually, week 2 last year, he had a 25-point game on a really big catch and run for a TD. Kind of saw a little bit of the same this week. He only had 6 targets this week, going down from 10 targets the first week. So they decreased his targets a little bit, and then he had a 40-yard reception for a touchdown. So that's 10 points right there. So, you take that away, he had a 5-point game. So OBJ is very talented, but at the same time, this might be something where someone sees him and sees the talent and the name and sees a good game, and you're able to flip him because ultimately in the season, he will probably be more of a low-end wide receiver too.
Yeah, all these guys depend on what team you have and what you can get for them. Cam Newton, he's a quarterback 1, but if you can get a running back 1 for him or a wide receiver 1, do it.
Exactly.
Do it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because they're so much more valuable, and you can stream QBs. So, even then, the price is there. Also, Joe Mixon, not the best game we were hoping for from him. I know a lot of people's flags are raised for him, just wondering if he's going to do that well. So, I think hold on to him right now. Wait until he's got a good game, and then try and dish him out, because I think overall for the year he's not going to produce what we thought he was. So, I think you have certain players that you don't necessarily think are going to produce that well. Wait until they have a lights out game. Don't sell them right now for, middle of the line value. Try and wait, see if they have a lights out game, and then try and turn them around for something good.
OBJ is the one that sticks out to me on that, because I don't see Baker Mayfield having a great year. I think it was a matchup that worked out for him. But these other guys, I would try trading them.
Yep. All right. Well, that's all we got for waves and trades.
Yep. And I think that's going to do it for the show. So we'll be talking about yesterday's game, on the Thursday show. So you'll get our reactions there. But be sure and go check us out on Twitter, on Facebook at GrownUpFF. We're working on some other things there in the works, possibly a website. I don't know.
Joey,
but
stop.
We've got some stuff in the works. But leave a comment below on what you thought of, the best players of the week, people who humbled and humiliated you in your league, and who you'd be trying to trade or try to add on the waiver, and give us a like. And yes, please subscribe. We've been talking about this for a while.
Do it. Yeah.
You guys got to subscribe.
It's on our minds.
I mean, if you want this kind of content, you don't have to subscribe technically, but you kind of do at the same time.
You'd be doing us a big favor.
You would. You'd be doing James a really big solid if you subscribe. So go like and subscribe. Go grow up and go get guffed.